For a long time, the orca Tilikum was one of the stars of SeaWorld's water shows, along with her trainer Dawn Brancheau. But the animal was also known for killing her violently. Until, after the release of the documentary Blackfish, 2013, Tilikum became a symbol of the fight for the liberation of orcas in captivity. Tilikum, a male of his species, was captured in 1983 off the coast of Iceland, aged about 2 years. Until he was transported to his first job, in a park in Canada, he was kept in a tank so small he could barely swim. Mainly because, being such a young animal, he has grown a lot. When he arrived at Sealand of the Pacific in Vancouver, Tilikum was placed in a tank just 8 meters wide, practically the size of an adult male. As if that weren't enough, he had to share this space with 2 female orcas who frequently attacked him. Tilikum developed gastric ulcers and constantly needed to be removed for treatments. It was here that he was involved in a human death for the first time, in 1991. Before the release of the documentary Blackfish, it was believed that Tilikum had only been involved in the death of one person, his trainer. But the film revealed 2 other fatalities. The deaths involving Tilikum. The first person to be killed by this orca, although her culpability is questionable, was Canadian student Kelty Byrne, who worked at Sealand of the Pacific. She fell into the small tank Tilikum shared with the other females. Witnesses said that, for several minutes, the young woman was practically used as a toy by the animals. She tried to save herself and get out of the tank, but was soon pulled by the orcas again. Faced with such a disaster, the Sealand of the Pacific Park ended up closing 18 months later, and the 3 whales were sent to SeaWorld. It was there that, on July 6, 1999, Tilikum was involved in a second human death. Visitor Daniel Dukes tricked security and stayed in the park overnight to visit the Tilikum tank. SeaWorld employees only found Dukes' remains the next day, next to the animal. The park argued that no camera recorded the event and that it was not possible to determine how the visitor ended up dead. After the visitor's death, the park continued to feature the whale Tilikum in shows, and he is said to have developed a special bond with his trainer, Dawn Brancheau. She had worked at SeaWorld since 1994 and became known as a competent trainer, becoming a kind of poster girl for the park. But everything would change in February 2010, when, right after a show, Tilikum pulled his trainer into the water. The result was a horrible death. The orca ripped off Dawn's arm, hair and part of her skin, in addition to breaking several of her bones. SeaWorld employees were only able to rescue the trainer's remains after 45 minutes, as Tilikum did not leave her side. After the tragedy, public opinion would begin to change, but the park didn't stop its shows and Tilikum was only out of them for a while. Until the 2013 documentary showed the other side of this story. Orcas are captured, mistreated and exploited in situations that push the animals to the limit of stress. Tilikum was one of the only orcas to actually kill someone after years of mistreatment, becoming a symbol of the fight to end this type of show. There are those who say that Tilikum killed these 3 people under the influence of stress, unintentionally, but there are also those who argue that this was a way for the orca to defend itself from aggression. With the repercussion of the documentary, the audience at SeaWorld decreased substantially. The orca Tilikum was removed from shows until his death in 2017. This renewed criticism of the park, which announced the end of its captive orca breeding program, of which Tilikum was one of the main participants. In total, he had more than 21 children. After the end of breeding orcas in captivity, the park's attendance increased again. In the 2020s, some orcas that had already been imprisoned since the 1970s, like Lolita, who lived at the Miami Seaquarium, were released into the wild.